I don't ever want to, like, weaponize my mental health to someone else, but it's like, I'm over here, like, feeling like I'm dying.
Constantly.
Like, at times feeling like I might actually die.
Right.
And you're not here.
Right.
And that was really frustrating.
Hello, friends. Welcome to another episode of the And Also podcast. I am your host, Madison. Thank you so much for joining today. Today is such a special experience for me because this guest and this topic is really what inspired me to start this podcast in the first place. Today, we're going to be talking about grief and partner loss and navigating life after someone you love dies. And I know that's very heavy. It's very intense. It's a taboo topic for a lot of people, but it's also something that a lot of us have lived through and a lot of us will live through, if not all of us. So I'm super excited to get into today's episode. There is so much to talk about, but definitely a huge trigger warning for death and suicide and grief and all of those really big topics. But of course, before I have my guest come in today, I wanted to share with you the drink of the day. Today we are drinking vanilla oat lattes. I absolutely love an oat latte. I like vanilla. I also love almond. If your local coffee shop has almond flavor, definitely do almond or almond and vanilla. It's so good. And I just love oat milk. It's my milk of choice, my plant milk of choice. This coffee is from the Broadway Grind. It's a small local coffee shop that I picked these up from, and it's super good. So yeah, that's the drink of the week. Let me know in the comments what you're drinking while you're watching this video. And the book of the week. I'm sure many of you have heard of this book. It's a pretty popular one, but it was recommended to me in the very early days of losing my ex-partner, Regis. And it's truly something I can credit my survival through that time too. And I feel like that's a lot of the themes of the books that I read is like, is this helping me live my day-to-day life in a way that's more comfortable? And this book is 1,000,000% that. This is The Year of Magical Thinking by Joan Didion. It is hands down the best book I've ever read. It has saved my life. I was super apprehensive of reading any books that had to do with grief, especially in the early days that I lost Regis. I was afraid of that like woo-woo, fake, stupid, annoying Hallmark greeting card, like he's in a better place type of thing. But this is very much not that. I was super hesitant. It was a recommendation from a friend of mine, and I just was like, you know what? I'm going to trust her and I'm going to read it. I could not put it down. I want to read it again with this perspective of, being a year since I read it. And this was my year of magical thinking, which I just made that connection right now. I literally read this book a year ago. And wow, this year has been wild. We just passed the 1-year anniversary of Regis's passing in November. It has been a year since I read this and a lot has changed. It's almost like a memoir of Joan Didion's experience losing her husband. And it's unlike any other memoir I've read. I feel like I've read so many memoirs about grief and loss, and this has by far just been so different than any of the others I read. I mean, she's an outstanding writer, but this just really hit me at a time where I needed it. And just reflecting on this last year has been extremely emotional. And you'll hear more about that in today's interview. That is the book of the week. And with that, let's get into today's interview. Thank you guys so much for watching if you're on YouTube and if you are listening on any streaming platform. All right, so on today's episode, I have a very special guest, somebody who actually inspired me to do this podcast in the first place.
That's just still a scary idea.
But I really, for me, it's been a roller coaster with grief and losing somebody at my age. Like, it's very weird. And you're really the only person I know that's been through something similar. So today we're going to be talking about grief, partner loss, and just navigating life after loss and all of the crazy little things that kind of come along with it. So I'll have you introduce yourself.
Hi, so I'm Evelyn Dara. I lost my partner to a very sudden and tragic accident. And it just kind of started off as a normal day, and then it wasn't. And now I'm kind of struggling with being a young person And I think also being an unmarried young person who was with their partner for an extended period of time and kind of dealing with the grief, dealing with the way people label you and the way people look at it, and just kind of all of it all at once.
What has been your experience like being so young, losing somebody that you plan to spend the rest of your life with?
I feel like the initial like day, obviously, and we've talked about this in the past, but it's just like you weren't there. Like I wasn't there. I was completely gone.
Right.
I can like look back and like remember some of it, but like for the most part, I was like completely dissociated for an incredibly long period of time. And I definitely feel like during that time I had a lot of good support, luckily, which I feel like is not something that everyone necessarily experiences.
Right.
Because like I had the people around me were basically keeping me alive.
Yeah.
My mom and the 3 women that were like helping me and my dad were keeping me alive. Because I remember like too, like I think for like a solid week at least, I didn't really eat either, and I like wasn't
Literally
brushing
no.
my hair, wasn't happening. Like I felt like my mom was there just like trying to like nurturing me like I was a child again. Amber stayed with me for like an incredibly long period of time and basically was just like on watch to make sure that I stayed alive.
Yeah.
And dealing with my crazy. And then like my friend Cassie like showed up the night of and like put down her entire life to show up for the worst night of my life that I don't know if I would have made through without her. And then like my friend Reagan, she was like kind of taking care of all the physical things that like you don't think about. Like she was like braiding my hair back, making sure that I was eating. Like she was literally like forcing soup in my face.
Soup is
like,
the thing.
Yeah, soup is the thing.
So we wanted to have this conversation because I, as many of you know, if you do like follow my social media, I lost my ex-partner to suicide in November of 2022. We were not like together at the time. It had been 3 years since we were together. We were still really good friends, very active in each other's lives, at least as much as we could be with his like mental health situation. When he died, I mean, I literally knew nobody, especially like around my age group who had lost a significant other. Like maybe people lost their grandparents and they're like, oh, I understand how you feel because my grandma died when I was 12.
But that's like...
It's so different.
Well, and like I feel so terrible using this example, but it's from It's Okay to Not Be Okay, which is that book that we both just really love.
Yes, fantastic.
But she said it's like the difference between the pain of like a paper cut versus like having a chainsaw cut your leg off. Yeah. Like you expect to get a paper cut at some point in your life, and that's not saying that it doesn't hurt, because it is hurt and that pain is valid, and I'm not trying to say it isn't.
Right.
But like you don't expect a chainsaw to come chop off your arm.
Right.
And that's like how that sudden, especially young loss, it's like, what just happened?
What I was saying before, from November when he died to probably like March, April, like I literally try so hard to think back. Like, how did I get through that? What did I do during that time? Apparently, I had a whole birthday party that I barely remember. There's so much during that period that I cannot recall for the life of me unless I see a picture. And even if I see a picture, I'm like, I don't remember being a part of that at all. And I feel like a lot of people don't really talk about that. It's just like, oh, you're supposed to get the news, plan the funeral, do all the things, and then, you know, you're supposed to just go back to work on Monday. There's literally like a period of my life that I don't even know if I was working at the time. Like, I have no idea.
Well, and that period for me, like, felt so much longer than it actually was.
Yeah.
Like, it felt like that first couple months felt like a whole year within itself.
Yeah.
Like, it was just, time did not exist to me. If nuclear war was happening, I wouldn't have known. Like, I was so out of it. Yeah. I was completely uninvolved with the rest of the world, just in my own little bubble, like, lost.
You're just kind of expected to like exist in your life, and you know, everyone's like, okay, you get back to work or do the things, feed the animals, visit family. Oh, all of a sudden it's the holidays, and like Regis died right before the holidays. I was supposed to have a normal Thanksgiving and my birthday and then a normal Christmas and then the New Year, and I'm like, wow, it's 2023 and Regis is not ever going to be in 2023.
It's hard to find phrasing for things in grief because it's
Yes.
like you're not glad, but appreciative,
right,
of hearing you say like the thing about 2023, because I dreaded the new year.
Yeah.
I'm like, I do not want to enter into a year that he is never going to be in.
Yeah.
Like, I will stay in 2022 forever. I don't want it.
Like, eventually I'm going to be older than him.
Yeah.
And older than he would ever get to be. He died when he was 24. I'm turning 24 in 5 days.
Yeah, I'm the same age as him now, and then next year I'm going to be older than him. And I'm like, this isn't correct. Like, he's always been older than me.
Every time I celebrate my birthday, it feels horrible and like deep down. It's like, okay, it's my birthday, and also, why should I get to celebrate being older when Regis doesn't get to?
Well, I had a hard time too. Like, sometimes I would forget how old he is because I just did it again.
Yeah.
That is.
It's like is, but what do you say?
But he passed like 2
Wasn't
days
it?
before.
Yeah, it
2
was
days before his
right.
birthday. He was just about to be this age.
Right.
And so sometimes when people ask me, I'm like, well, he is this age, and that's not correct because we never got there. And that's something that's also so frustrating too, is that set of days is just like, this is awful. Because we're like being asked to like mourn the loss of him, and then like a day later we're mourning or we're celebrating the life of him. And it's just like so much at once. I take off those days at like the start of the year. I'm like, don't expect
I'm not going to be able to be present.
Yeah.
I'm so sorry. I've done it. I will probably continue doing it this whole time, but using like present or past terminology, like Regis was, Regis is, and it's really difficult. And I feel like the more that time passes, the more difficult it becomes to figure out what's right, because it's not that I'm like accepting it, but it does start to feel more real that he is not here.
I feel like I struggle with it a lot. And like this comes back to like kind of that disbelief that you suffer from in the beginning. He had just come back from like a deployment, like literally just come back. That you were expecting him to be out for a very long one. It was like I was kind of used to him not always being there.
Oh.
And so it became very confusing. And there was times where I did genuinely feel insane because I was like, he's just deployed right now.
Like he's coming
just
back.
Deployed.
Yeah,
he's coming back. And so like the was is really got to me for a really long time and still does, because I was like, he's going to come back with the boat like any second. This isn't real. And I think that was like the biggest struggle that I had, was I really did feel crazy.
I think for me personally, I have a difficult time with it because there's also the period of Regis before he got sick and Regis after he got sick and until he passed.
Mm-hmm.
It's like the Regis that I knew was like mentally stable and was not the Regis that died. Who am I grieving? Is it the Regis that I knew, or is it the Regis that had schizophrenia? Which one? So I guess I do relate to like, you know, the going away, like being deployed, you're like missing someone, but they're coming back. It's like almost this past version of them that you're expecting to walk through the door. But
well, I think too, like with you living further away from home, like both of us moved, you were used to not having him part of the everyday. You're like, oh, he'll just call.
Yeah, because you were living hours away, which in those early days, like it had to feel kind of isolating. I mean, until people were able to get to you.
Yeah, it was definitely very tough. And I feel like there was times where like his family was there and they were in charge of a lot of the planning stuff. So like they had things to do. And like I really didn't. I don't think that I could have. Like I'm amazed that they handled everything the way that they did, because I really don't think that I could have done it. And I just kind of like disappeared. And I'm like, I'm seeing these people moving around me, but I'm not here. We were at the funeral the next day, that morning. And to me, that was crazy, because I'm like, this isn't real. And like I feel like that's like the biggest issue that I have with is it's so finalizing. It's strange because, like, definitely, like I said, in the moment, I was very dissociated. And, like, my mom could tell, like, especially when they were having the reading line, I was in that with his family. And so, like, I had people coming out to me and, like, talking to me. And I'm like, I'm not even hearing what you're saying. You couldn't even, like,
understand the words.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And, like, half the time it's, like, people I knew were in front of me. And I'm like, I don't know who you are.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not even here enough to process who you are. I could have known you my whole life. And I'm like, I don't know who you are right now. And so that was very strange. And, like, my mom said she was watching me a lot and she could just see, like, I was absent.
Were you even crying, or, like could you cry?
It was kind of on and off. There was times where, like, I could not stop, and other times where I was just completely blank.
Yeah.
But it's weird now, like, looking back, there's, like, elements of that period that, and it seems so wrong to say, but, like, I almost miss, but I think I just miss having those people who cared about him around. because like everyone has to go back to their
Yeah.
lives. They can't stay in this moment the way that we're kind of stuck in it. So it was like
Yeah.
nice to have those people around, and like they all cared about him and they were there and we were talking about him, and I still want to talk to him about him every second. And it's not that these people don't care, it's just like they have to continue with their lives.
Yeah, and their relationship to him was just different in the way that, like, they knew him in a way, but you
Yeah.
knew him in all the ways. So every aspect of your life is impacted. And it's not like, you know, they probably think of him from time to time when something comes up that reminds them. But those time-to-time things, those reminders are literally everywhere for us. It's almost impossible for me to, like, enjoy anything because, you know, I'll go somewhere with my friends and all I can think is like the time where Regis and I did this thing here, or the time that we celebrated his birthday here, or the time that we got in a fight by these steps, like just really specific things, and they're in your head and they're stuck because you don't want to be the downer. You don't want to
Yeah.
make everyone all of a sudden sad because you're like, oh yeah, this place reminds me of Regis because we went on our first date here, and everyone's like,
Yeah.
what do we do? Do we say anything? Do we, like, how do we react to that? Like, you almost can't even say his name because it's like a curse word. They're like,
Yes.
everyone stops and just stares at you.
A lot of my closest friends, like those main three who were like
Right.
there for all of that, they're pretty good about it. They're comfortable enough with me talking about him, but like they also knew him too, which helps.
Yeah.
I think one of the better decisions I made, and it was very strange because I still for the life of me do not remember applying for this job, but I ended up
I felt
getting
that.
offered like at one of them. I don't even know why I answered the phone. Like they're lucky I did,
Right.
because at one of the memorial services for him, I got offered a job. Like I got
Oh my
called and
God.
offered an interview for a job. I'll talk to my bosses now and they'll say like, you were so great in the interview. And I'm like, I literally
Do you even remember? Like,
barely remember it. And I know for a fact that when I hung up that Zoom call, I was hyperventilating, sobbing. The job that I ended up getting was like the job. It was like the job we were looking
you're still
for me
there?
to get. Yes.
wow.
And it was like the job we were looking for me to get when we moved down there. And the fact that I got the job that was in the plan after the fact was just so wild to me and so bittersweet. But then the point that I was trying to make about it was, I think it was good that I left the job that I was in because I loved the people that I worked with at my other school. But if I had gone back there, I would have been the person who lost their spouse.
Yes.
That was all I would have been the whole
Yes.
time I was there. Versus, like, it was incredibly difficult to restart here. I wasn't that person. Like, the people in my life there now, they know about it. And I've made a lot of really
Yeah.
good friends at this school.
You could also pick and choose who
Yeah.
you knew. You weren't
Exactly.
coming back into it with everyone knowing it and,
And they
having to
still-
relive it with every condolence you got.
Exactly. And they still don't all know it. And, like, my kids don't know. Like, that was the thing at my old school. All my kids knew.
Right.
And it's like, here, my kids don't know. It's not their job to worry about me.
Right.
It's my job to worry about them. So,
Right.
like, that to me, too, I'm like, how do I do my job now? But, like,
Yeah.
too, like, I can make friends that are after people. They're not making that comparison to who I was before. And I can talk about Demir a lot more easily because they're after people.
Yes. Oh my God, yes. There is this idea that you're going to return to that version of yourself. It's like, Madison, we miss the old you. We miss when you would go out. We miss when you would, you know, be down to go get food at, you know, midnight. Or we miss when you would not be depressed sitting in your bed 24/7. And there is no going back to that.
No.
And it is so much easier to be friends with new people because you can pick and choose what information is available to them about the
Yes.
situation. With my friends who knew Regis, I almost have to have a disclaimer when I bring him up of like, I'm not bringing this up in a depressing way, I promise. I'm just bringing it up like just to say something. But with people who didn't know him, I can actually just say, oh, yeah, Regis and I did this thing.
Yeah.
And it's like you talk about it and you move on.
Exactly. Like, I
It's
can listen to
not-
my friends at work talk about their partners, and I can talk about Demir. And the other thing is, I feel like talking with them about it kind of helps with that is-was thing, because I can say is with them. And yes, they're aware, but they weren't there for it.
Because to them,
And to talking to them,
is.
it's like telling them for the first time about these stories, and it
Yes.
feels more like a now reliving
Yeah.
of the stories.
Because they're not looking at it as was because they didn't know him.
Yeah.
With any sort of traumatic event that you experience, you're never going to be the same person. Even if you go through a really serious car crash
Mm-hmm.
and you like break your legs, you're not going to be the same. In so many ways, you're going to have different fears and anxieties, and the experience shapes you. But with grief, it's the same thing. And people don't understand that. They think there's like an end line. They think, that's why I hate when people say like grief is a journey, because journey just implies that there's an end. And there is no destination with this. It's an ongoing thing forever until I die.
The stigma around mental health and like in general, and like especially with Regis, but then also with like loss.
It's
like
so
people
bad.
don't think about, it's like, oh, you're just sad.
Yep.
And it's like, no, like I didn't want to be here.
Right.
I didn't want to be
Right.
here, and I like really didn't want to be here. Like to the point where like I had one of his buddies come in and take like the next day, because that day I had just enough foresight to know where I was going to be, to say, you need to take every key from this gun safe away from me, and you need to change that code, and you need to not tell me what it is. Like I had just enough foresight to be like, you need to like save me from me, because I can see where I'm heading and I'm not going to be okay.
This is how I thought about it, and this is really dark. Trigger warning.
Yes, I just said what I said.
It's, and I feel like you're just going to understand this in a different way. But to me, my thought was, I'm going to die anyways.
Mm-hmm.
This life is meaningless now. Why the would I suffer for the next, 70 years for the same outcome? I'm going to die no matter what. I can either suffer for decades or I could just get it over with now. And when I would say that to people, like there were a very select handful of people I said that to. I mean, I didn't even mean it in like a, I'm going to kill myself way.
Well, and that's so hard to explain to people, because the thing is, like, that thought is there in my brain, but I know I'm not actually going to do it.
Yeah.
And, like, if I wasn't voicing this to you, that's when you should really be scared. Well, I feel like almost with Regis, everyone was on, like, heightened alert.
Yeah.
So that definitely didn't help. Everyone was really nervous already.
Yeah, it was like we were all trying to make sure no one else was going to kill themselves. Like,
and it's like, and that was even a conversation that I had with his brother, like, right away. But I was only having that conversation with him because I knew how I felt.
yeah.
And I'm like, I just told him, I'm like, I'm not going to preach to you about anything. All I'm going to say is if you are feeling any type of way, I need you to call me, because I am having feelings and thoughts that I never thought I would have.
Right.
Like, I genuinely do not want to be here.
Right.
And it was like a constant chant in my head.
Yeah.
Like, he is dead. He is dead. And it wouldn't stop.
Yeah. And it's like, what's the point? He's dead. Why am I here? Why am I doing this? What is my purpose? Especially because you're so far from like your family.
Yeah.
And you're in this house that was your house with him. I honestly, like, I give you so much credit for being able to stay there, because I honestly don't think I would have been able to.
Well, and that was something that, like, a lot of people didn't get at the time, and it was something that I really had to get people to understand, because the other thing was, like, the accident happened, like, around the corner from our house.
Really?
Like, yeah, there was
So do you, like, drive by it often, or do you see it? Like, what is that
Luckily, I
like?
didn't have to drive by it at first, and, like, my one friend's house was kind of that way, so, like, if I had to go to her house, I would take the long way, because I'm like, I'm just going to plan to not drive this direction. And so that was really difficult for a long time, because it would really get in my chest if I went anywhere near there.
Yeah.
And, like, even one night I had someone walked from that direction down the road with, like, a flashlight, because
Oh
like
my
people had
God.
come to get us with flashlights, and I saw that and I'm just like, I can't breathe.
Yeah.
And I felt absolutely insane, because I ended up going to the ice box and literally just, like, stuffing my shirt full of ice, because I'm like, I can't breathe. I need to come back down to earth. I'm like, and I'm, like, gonna pass out.
Right.
Like, I'm straight up gonna pass out. And so it definitely hasn't been easy being in the house, but I think it would have been a lot harder coming back here. And that's a really hard thing to tell your family, who wants you to be around. And luckily my family's been incredibly supportive about it, because if I came back here, I would have moved into my parents' basement and I would have never come out. And
you were neighbors here.
And that's the other thing, is, like, either way, I'm staring at a house that we lived in. Like, it doesn't matter one way or another. It's like, do I want to have to stare at a house and see other people in it, or do I want to have this place that we really, like, built as ours.
Right.
But if I had come back here, I just knew, I'm like, that would have been it. Like, I would not have done anything with my life. Like, at least in this house, I can continue doing the things that we plan to do. And I think that was another big concern that people had, was that I was just going to start only living for him. But I'm like, this wasn't just his thing. Like, we were partners. We had these plans together. I didn't just agree to these because it was something he wanted. It was something we both wanted.
In so many ways, it's all you have left. So if that's what gets you through,
Yeah.
who cares? We find very strange coping mechanisms in grief, and like just little things that we do, almost like rituals that we do. And they might be crazy to other people. They might make zero sense to other people. But at the end of the day, it's like, if that's what gets you through, there's much worse things you could be doing. Besides the actual loss itself, what has been the most difficult part in the aftermath of this? So after the funeral, after all the stuff and everybody leaves and you're just kind of like left to live your life in this new way, what has been the hardest part?
And it's so hard to like disentangle the two. Definitely like the sleeping situation was very difficult because I hadn't been in my bed alone for like since I got out of college. Like, I met Demir directly out of college.
Right.
And so I hadn't been sleeping alone like hardly ever.
Right.
Except maybe when he was deployed. But that was like normal.
Right.
And even
It's
then,
different.
that still sucked. So.
Right. But in that way, you know he's coming home.
Yeah.
So it's like, this is just for now.
Yeah. I started, and it seems so ridiculous, and I feel like to other people it's going to sound insane, but I started sleeping across the top of the bed facing the headboard. So I'm like sleeping where the pillows are supposed to be. Because that way I'm waking up and I know where I am, and I'm not having that confused moment when you're first starting to come back, where it's like, he's right there next to me.
Right.
Because that was like the hardest part for the first month, I would say, that I was alone in that bed. Because like at first my mom was sleeping in the bed with me. So at the very least I was waking up and there was someone there, and it was very clearly not him. And so that helped.
Right.
Versus once I was in it alone, I was like, oh, he's right there. And then I would fully wake up and I'm like, it would just hit all over again.
Right. Like you have to literally do this grounding exercise, essentially, to make sure that you're not allowing room for that freak out in the morning of like, what is real? Is this really happening to me? And it's once again like one of those grief rituals that you do that seems like insane to other people, but it's literally what keeps you from starting off every day wanting to die.
Yeah. Stuff that seems so simple, and I've seen this meme about it.
Oh, God.
Where it's like the one about the brushing the teeth.
Oh, yup.
And it's like, oh, depression makes it hard for people to brush their teeth. And it's like, depression makes people want to kill themselves.
Right.
But like, it honestly, like, it's such a dark joke, but it was so validating to be like, okay, I'm not a freak for not brushing my freaking teeth.
Yeah.
Because I had such a hard time getting myself to brush my teeth. And I'm like, why is this such a difficult task? It is just brushing my teeth.
Yeah.
It was ridiculous. But that was like one of those things. And then too, like cooking. Oh my God. Because I started really cooking once we started dating. And I just like really enjoyed trying new things and having him taste them and like seeing his reaction.
Right.
So that was like my big reason why I like cooking. So like that stopped.
It took the joy out of cooking.
Yeah.
Because like, the reason you love to do it is not here.
Yeah. And so for like a solid, and the other thing was I couldn't touch the knives in my kitchen without freaking out. I was fine with them being there, which was strange, but I couldn't.
You couldn't make that
physically
personal
touch
connection.
them.
Yeah.
Like if I touched them, I was like, we want to do things with these knives that they're not meant for.
Right. Eating was the hardest part for me, I think.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, I wasn't sleeping for the first few months. I don't even know how I lived without like losing my mind, because I barely slept. Every single time I would close my eyes, I would see what happened, and I would replay it over and over, and once my brain would go there, I couldn't get myself out. And then eating, like, I was just like, what is the point?
Yeah.
What is the point of this? How dare I eat like when Regis is dead?
Yeah.
And that's what it was for everything. It was like, how dare I smile? How dare I go to work? How dare I hang out with my friends when Regis is dead? What is the point? And I almost started like using that for things that it was like brushing my teeth. Why am I brushing my teeth when Regis is dead? Why am I brushing my hair when Regis is dead? And that can literally like destroy your life, but you can't stop because everything feels stupid. And like it's like, why am I putting effort into anything when this person that I love is never gonna be here? Everything feels selfish.
Yeah. The hair thing, too, was definitely an issue. That's why I ended up having this short hair because it was so long before, and I'm like, I can't take care of this.
Yeah.
And, like, right when school was supposed to start, I'm like, I'm going to go cut my hair into bob.
Yeah.
Like, because I can't
manage
have something that needs to be brushed like this. And, like,
Yeah.
at least with a bob, there was some days where, like, if I didn't brush my hair, it wasn't the end of the world.
Right.
Versus, like, I had, like, just this matted knot in the back. And luckily I found, like, the nicest hairdresser ever because I'm like, I probably look like an absolute insane person coming in here.
I constantly like wonder how did I get through that?
Mm-hmm.
Because no one was there to tell me like you need to do these things. I stopped going to therapy because therapy felt like I was trying to solve my grief with my therapist. I was trying to rationalize. I was trying to keep myself from getting to the darkest point, but I was at the darkest point. So I had to stop going to therapy for a while because it became very toxic. I couldn't talk to my friends because they didn't understand, and they tried their best, but it's like,
How can they?
how much can you really
And
help?
it's like you want them to understand, but at the same time, you know the only way they can understand is to go through it, and it's like you don't want that for them.
Right, so you're just alone, and you're just like floating through. And it's like, how did I even get through that? Actually, my boyfriend at the time, he was very, very pushy about me doing group therapy for suicide survivors. I was extremely against it. I know myself, and I knew that it would do more harm than good. I was not ready for something like that because I am too empathetic. If I hear somebody else's story about grief, I am going to focus on that.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to worry about these people in the group. I'm going to it was too much, but he kind of like pressured me into doing it and like almost like held it over my head. Like every time I would say, I'm hurting, I'm suffering, all this stuff, he'd be like, well, maybe you should do something about it. Maybe you should join this group. And it got to the point where I got so fed up with him that I just did it. And as expected, it was extremely hard for me. I couldn't even focus on myself during this because I'm hearing about all these people who had their partners, their friends, their mother, their sibling commit suicide. And I'm like, I feel so much for these people and I want to support them and help them. Then I forgot why I was even there. And then outside of the group, all I could think about was these people and what they went through. So I hated that pressure to like fix it.
Yeah. And I feel like it's almost like enabling for yourself to like put the focus on someone else.
Yes.
So like, I don't have to face this if I can put the focus completely on someone else. Even that night, I saw that there were kids outside someone's house, and I am in the middle of the biggest mental breakdown. You're going to the mental hospital, freak out of my life. And then I saw these kids that were outside, and I'm like, they can't be out here. I like started freaking out. I'm like, they can't be out here. They can't witness this. Like I was literally losing my mind. It's like I'm going through the biggest loss of my life, and I just completely distracted myself with that.
Right. Right. It's like the weirdest, littlest things.
Your mind will do anything to focus on something else, even if it's not a better thing.
It could be anything because it's if you can alleviate any of that suffering, even if it's for half a second, not even alleviate, just like change directions.
Mm-hmm.
How have you been treated differently as a grieving person? Which I feel like is such a...
It's such a difficult
It's a loaded question.
It really depends on the perspective that you give it. There's a lot of people in my life that aren't in my life anymore, and I've just kind of had to come to terms with that and accept it, and it's kind of like going through multiple losses at once.
Right.
Because there's definitely a couple people that, like, before this happened, I thought were, like, my ride or dies. Like, they're going to be here for all of it. And then I'm like, wow, like, you're gone.
You gave me nothing.
Yeah. And, like, even the moments when they did show up, it was like, this isn't enough. And, like, I almost don't want to blame them fully because I'm like, how could you possibly know what I need? But, like, you're not even here at all. These are people that, like, I would hop on a plane for.
Right.
And they weren't there.
Right.
certain people in my life, I was like, I understand. Like, you can't. But there was, like, other people that I'm like, I don't understand. And those were the people that I kind of just slowly faded out of my life because I'm like, I can't deal with this and deal with you and try to fix whatever the heck went wrong here.
Yeah,
on
you
top
almost
of
feel
like
guilty.
trying to get myself back together.
Right.
And that's the thing. It's like you feel like, am I being too judgmental? Am I putting my mental health on this other person? But it's just like you're not even doing the bare minimum.
Right.
And you don't know how to talk to them about it without like feeling like you're guilting them
Into supporting you.
Yeah, into supporting you. And
Yes.
like I don't ever want to like weaponize my mental health to someone else, but it's like I'm over here like feeling like I'm dying.
Constantly.
Like at times feeling like I might actually die.
Right.
And you're not here.
Right.
And that was really frustrating. And then also just I feel like as a young person, you get a lot of weirdness because you have this big bright future ahead of you and you're going to move on. You have time to find love again.
The whole life ahead of you.
And it's like at this point in my life, and it could change, but at this point in my life, I'm like, I don't want to.
Yeah.
And it's like, it's this expectation that if also, like, people treat you with this idea that if you don't find love again, you're never going to be happy again the way you were. And it's like, no matter what, I'm never going to be happy again the way I was.
No.
But I think I can find some semblance of happiness on my own.
And I think that's way more important than trying to fill this void with somebody else. That's not fair to yourself and that's not fair to the other person.
It's like a double-edged sword because then if you do move on, it's too soon. Or if you don't move on, you're holding on too long. I'm just like, can't we just do whatever it is we need to do for individual selves?
And that's almost so much to ask.
Yeah.
Because people want to, it's not even like brush it under the rug. I think for some people it is. It's like, you know, the funeral's over. We dealt with it. That was our grief. But they just want to fix it and they want you to be fixed because I think at the end of the day, people do care and they're trying, but they don't have the tools. And it's mostly because we don't talk about grief in like the Western society. It's very taboo for whatever reason because all of us are going to die. So like, why are we not talking about the thing that all of us will collectively experience? Mm-hmm. But people want to fix it. They want you to return to this version of yourself. And instead of trying to fix me, just be there. I'm not asking for a solution. There is no solution. Unless you could bring Regis back from the dead, there's no solution.
Exactly.
There's no fixing it. So stop trying to fix it and just be there. Just listen. Just give me the space to talk about it. Because like you were saying before, we are always thinking about it.
Yeah.
No matter what, 24/7. So all we need sometimes is to just get it out of our heads. Mm-hmm. That's it.
Don't make us, and it's so hard to do because I feel like no matter what, we're going to feel guilty, but don't make us feel guilty for talking about it.
Right.
Like, we're not trying to suck the joy out of our, like, everyone else's room and everyone else's good time, but, like...
Yes, you feel like the black cloud.
Yeah.
Like, you're just...
Oh, my God, yes.
You're just showing up to ruin everyone's day. It's like, God forbid you say his name. You have literally rained on everyone's parade. Like...
Committed a sin.
Yeah.
People are like, why don't you come out more? Because I can't talk. And like people aren't doing it to you on purpose, but it's like if I say Demir's name, I've let like a rabid bear into the room.
Everybody stops. Everybody freezes and looks at you and they're like, what do we do? What do we say?
You see this mix of concern and almost like resentment that like you're ruining everyone's good time. So it's like you want me to be more social, but it's so hard. It's because I'm like, I'm trying not to ruin it, but it's like this person was the source of my happiness. And for me to reconnect with my happiness a lot of times is to talk about him. And I feel like this is something people say a lot. And it just sounds so cliche. But if you knew Demir or Regis, they were both such gigantic personalities in very different ways.
Yes.
But like genuinely, if you knew them, they had a sizable impact on your life because they both were such like uncharacteristic personalities. And they just took such joy in themselves too. And it was just like they were such a big presence. Like they made themselves known. Yeah. They weren't afraid to take up space. And I think that's something they both had in common.
Yeah.
To then have them not be there, that's a big impact.
Yeah.
Like it really, really is. And it's like, it's something that you hear said, but it's like with them, like genuinely.
Right.
And so now, especially like with Demir, he was like a very loud, happy presence. His happy was too loud in like the best possible way.
He was
and so
like
now
so
to have
goofy.
that silence, it's like,
Yeah. It's even louder.
what do I do? It's a huge difference.
Yeah. And I'm sure he also brought out those things in you too. So it's
Yes.
almost hard to access that place in yourself now.
Yes, and that's something that I've struggled with a lot and I still haven't gotten better about because, like, I've never been super comfortable in social situations, whereas, like, Demir was, like, he could be comfortable around anyone.
He literally
And
didn't
he could-
care. Like,
and
he
he-
was just like,
yeah.
I'm here. Here I am.
He's like,
Let's
I'm
do
here.
it.
I'm going to be friends with everyone. If you don't like me, that's okay. I'm still going to be nice to you.
Right.
And I'm still going to be happy no matter what. And that's something that I struggle with. He just, in such a, like, a positive way, did not care what people thought about him.
Yeah.
And that's something that I have struggled to maintain and find for myself again because I feel
Yes.
like that made such a positive difference in my life. And I'm like, I need to find this within myself. And it's been really difficult and I'm still not fully there, but I've gotten better.
And I think with the added layer of grief, you
Yeah.
already feel like you're out of whack with your entire like identity because you almost just identify with your grief. It's like your whole life.
Yeah.
So being able to feel comfortable being yourself, part of ourselves is that grief. And when it makes other people uncomfortable, it makes us shut down and not want to be ourselves because
Yeah.
that's part of who we are now.
And that's such a hard thing to like navigate to just figure out like who you are in that grief, I guess.
Yeah.
Because like there's definitely some parts of it where I was like, I don't like this person and I don't know how to manage this grief and balance it and make it less heavy
Right.
without falling into someone that I really don't like.
Right. There's something one of my friends told me that kind of really sticks with me is when somebody dies, there's two deaths. There's them actually dying, like the actual thing, the actual event. But then there's the death where people stop talking about them and people forget them and people move on and people let them die. And
Yeah.
that is horrifying to me. So I feel like letting go of parts of my grief is letting Regis die even more than he already is. Like all we have left are the stories, the memories, the experiences.
No, definitely. And I think that's something that me and like his family have had a real issue with and something that like we just want to hear his name wherever we can.
Right.
And like we want his name to be wherever it can be. So like we have like the stone, we have road signs, like he has a road now in his hometown. His mom just got this gorgeous bench for him made.
Wow.
I'm gonna adopt a road near our house and like do that whole thing. So like we're trying to have his name in as many places as possible because we don't want people to forget he's here. And
Right.
like the ship now has an award for community service that they're doing for Demir. And so like every time the boat goes underway, it's kind of like he's still there. And like all of that stuff
Wow.
is just like so important and it seems so silly.
I could tell because you're
Yeah.
smiling about it.
Yeah.
And it's
even
like bringing you joy just talking about
yeah.
small pieces of him still being here.
And even like Gold Star families, who's like for a family to have lost a military service member, they do this thing and it just seems so small, but it's such a big deal. They have this bell ringing and all they do is they ring a bell and say their name. But it's like, you know that every year, no matter what, someone's saying his name. It seems so simple. But
No,
it's like
I have, like,
someone
body
is
chills.
literally
Yeah.
saying his name
Yeah.
every year.
Okay. What parts of grief for you have been the most shocking?
Definitely like the toll on my mental health that it's taken has been pretty shocking. Not been perfect, but like I've never had feelings like this before.
Right.
Like
Like a
I've-
major traumatic event.
It just feels like I don't have full control of myself.
Yeah.
God, a couple weeks ago, my script wasn't filled. And so, like, for the longest time, I have felt better. And then to have my script not filled and to go off my meds for, like, oh, God, it was, like, maybe 3 days. But it was enough. And to
It almost
have
reveals
your-
like
yeah,
the true self.
exactly. And to have yourself, like, slide back and you're like, oh, my God.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not actually better was, like, really horrifying. They don't work for everyone, but like, try medication, people, please, Jesus. To see that person in the mirror again and be like, this is where I could still be.
Yeah.
I was like, I can't do this. Like, I can't handle being that person on my own. And so to have something that helps me get through the day is pretty great. I think the original fear was that it was going to completely numb me out.
Right.
And it hasn't done that, but it's just made it so like I can breathe.
Yeah, I mean, medication saved my life.
Yeah.
1,000,000%. I think for me, the most shocking part was how horrible my memory got and like how just clocked out I was 24/7. Because I think like I have ADHD, so I'm like very hyper aware of things and like very I'm like a go type of person. Like I always have something on my schedule. I am barely not doing anything. And when Regis died, I couldn't. I was like, is my ADHD broken? Like, what's wrong with me? Like, why can't I hang out with friends? Like, why can't I do anything? And then there was the blackout period where I couldn't remember anything. I couldn't, like, it felt like I was just moving through the days. And, like, I've just never in my life felt anything like that.
I definitely, like, had a very similar thing where it was just like, I don't feel like I'm here. I don't remember, like, there was a lot of stuff that I didn't remember.
Yeah.
And, like, a lot of stuff that other people, I was, like, vaguely aware that I should be doing something, but they were keeping track of it for me because I just couldn't. You said you had trouble sleeping. I slept a lot because sleeping was the closest to being dead that I could get.
So real.
Like,
so real. Like, you could be unconscious.
Yes.
You know? Did you have dreams about him?
I've had, like, one really vivid one that felt like it wasn't just a memory, but I haven't had as many as I would like.
Right.
Like, I've had other ones that I could tell were just, like, my mind kind of fucking with me.
Right.
But I had the one that was, like, really good because I was like, I don't remember this moment.
Yeah, it felt like a new experience with him.
And so that one, I was like, I'm going to choose to believe that this was, like,
something
real.
In the afterlife. Yeah. But this is a really touchy subject because I think obviously everyone has a different perspective. But for me, being told he's with God, he's in heaven, he's in a better place. You couldn't say anything worse to me.
I'm sure that there are people out there that statement is comforting to. As people who have lost people in such abrupt and almost violent ways,
brutal horrible
ways, that is a horrible thing to say. Like, if they had been suffering from an illness, I'd take it. I'd be like, you know what? I saw them suffer, and you're right. They probably didn't want to keep having to do that. But to have them have to go through that, like, do you honest to God think that's something that they would have chosen?
Right.
And they would have thought, oh, well, I'm in a better place now. I went through this horrible, awful thing.
Right.
In this type of situation, it's very dismissive of our feelings, but it's also very dismissive of how awful that experience must have been for them. To say, like, oh, yeah, like, it's basically just saying, like, it's fine that they went through that because they're in a better place now. And it's like, but it's not.
You're saying, like, he's with God. What God would want to put somebody through what Demir and Regis went through?
And that's something that I've really struggled with because I have to believe he's somewhere.
Right.
Like, I could not still be here if I didn't believe he was still somewhere. But if there is a God, me and him are not on speaking terms.
Right.
Like,
yeah.
Because people have asked me if I want to go to church, and, like, I went once with his mother, and, like, that was kind of nice because it was outside.
Right.
So it wasn't so much the church aspect of it, but more of being out in nature in a way that Demir enjoyed that kind of, like, helped me. But I think, like, a typical church environment I would not be able to do. And I've also had, for some freaking reason, predominantly priests tell me that the God will send me someone else to love, that I will find someone else.
That is such an irrelevant thing to say.
Well, and then I've straight up said to people, I don't want to.
But they're like, you don't want to because you're just feeling this way now. They diminish your feelings. Yes.
And they're like, and well, that's just right now. Someday you might feel different. And I'm like, who cares about someday? I'm here right now.
I'm trying to get through every day.
And, like,
you can barely plan for your future, let alone, like, how you're going to address dating, if you even do address dating in the future. Like, you're not worried about that.
And it's just, like, such a weird thing to say. The idea of someone else ever touching me makes me physically ill. Just the thought of it. Each person's different. Like, just let you do what you need to do.
Let me live.
this idea that, like, in the afterlife we're all reunited, I'm like, okay, if I find somebody else,
that's going to be awkward.
I know, and then I'm reunited with him. I'm like, I'm never gonna love anyone else as much as him. So what? Am I gonna be with someone in life who fully knows that, like, when we go into the afterlife, peace, bro. Right. It was nice, but bye.
Like, we gotta agree on that.
Yeah. Like,
thanks for keeping me company.
Yeah.
You're not the one. Yeah, I didn't really think of that before, but that is so true. That's why I have a hard time, like, grappling the idea of an afterlife, and, like, Regis killed himself, so according to the Bible, he's in hell.
That's a very frustrating perspective, and that's something that's very much irritated me. And I can't imagine, as being someone, like, more involved, how that feels.
It's really frustrating to think about, because I also have that feeling of, like, I need to believe he's somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
But if I go by the Bible, he is not in heaven. Where else? What do you do? Where do you go? What happens?
It's weird because, like, coming into this, I'm like, are people going to get the wrong idea that I'm just... And I feel like that's constant when you're talking about this kind of stuff, that, like, you feel like people are going to judge you, and you feel like if you come across too calm, or you don't come across calm enough, that you're either way somehow seeking attention,
right?
Or
making
you don't care anymore.
Yeah.
You're making about you. I can't sit here and carry everyone else's cares,
right?
Or you're being a martyr, and it's just like, it's frustrating. I was so excited to come on this because I'm like, I want to talk to him about him, and I also want to be able to talk about this in a space that I feel safe.
Yeah.
But I also don't want people to think that I'm doing it for all the wrong reasons.
Right.
But at the end of the day, like, you can't worry about those people because they're not in the shoes you're in, so they don't get it.
Yeah, and the people who need to hear this message will hear it. The people who are grieving and who need to feel less alone are going to hear this, and those are the people that matter in this.
But there's not a lot of young people that are going through this, and there's not a lot of stuff out there about people talking about it.
No.
So it's like, it's really hard to feel seen in a situation like this. Now, with new people that come into my life, I think I've gotten very blunt about it. But the thing is, I'm at the point where I'm like, I don't want to be unkind about it. I don't want to make you uncomfortable. But if this is something that is going to make you uncomfortable, or that you can't handle, that maybe a place in my life isn't right for you.
Right.
And it's like, that's okay. And I'm just going to give you the opportunity to kind of step out now.
I mean, I did the same thing with the person I was dating when Regis died. I was like, I understand that this is not, like, an ideal situation to deal with. And, like, you have a choice. Like, you didn't know Regis. You have a choice on whether you want to take this on or not. And I will not be upset with you if you don't choose this.
Yeah.
Because it's a lot for people to deal with, especially when they're not equipped to.
Some of the people that I'm friends with now, who I met in that, like, after part, it's nice because they have come in knowing that this is a part of me, knowing that this is part of my life, and accepted it and signed on for it.
Right.
Versus, like,
the childhood friends.
Yeah, fortunately or unfortunately, they didn't have a choice.
Right.
On whether or not to sign on for it. Like, they kind of were just like, you're part of this now.
Right. Like, they're just by association. And a lot of them knew him, too. So they have their own grief with it.
Which is, like, a whole other level of frustration for me. We experienced a lot of, as partners of these people, kind of not feeling like we were as important as other people in their lives. But then also to, like, be a friend of these people, I feel like that gets forgotten a lot, too.
Yes.
Because that was something that really frustrated me a lot in the beginning, was, like, Amber literally put her whole entire life on pause to take care of me, on top of the fact that she lost someone who was also very important to her. People around us in that forgot that a lot. So much attention would go to me, and I'm like, but she's here, too. She did go through this too. So that was very frustrating as well. And I can see how, as a friend of someone who just lost someone major in life, sometimes it's a bit too much. Like, you're going through it too. You need a minute. I just feel like that's something that's forgotten and people need to be a little bit more aware of.
In high school, I lost one of my really good friends to an overdose. And I felt like I could not grieve him because his siblings and his family, and how must his parents feel? And who am I to be, like, hurt about this when I can't even imagine the level of pain that they're going through? And you have this, like, self-doubt with your grief about, like, whether it's valid or not as the friend, because you're also trying to be the support system. Like, he was my friend, now I need to be there for his siblings because they don't have their older brother anymore, you know? And so you almost put yourself on the back burner entirely. Even with Regis, it's like, I'm grieving, but imagine how his mom feels.
Yeah.
Imagine how his siblings feel. I can't compare. So then you tell yourself, like, it could be worse. It's not that bad, even though it's horrible for everybody. And all of it is valid.
People were using her to ask about how I was. But then they weren't ever asking her. And it was even more frustrating when it was people who knew us both.
Right.
Like, I could almost forgive the people that were, like, from his side of things, who hadn't met her before, who hadn't really met me before.
Right.
So, like, that was different. But, like, to have people that have been in both of our lives for so long kind of, like, put her on the back burner, too, that was, like, very frustrating for me.
Right. Because it makes you then feel even more guilty on top of all the guilt you already feel. How have you changed since Demir died?
I mean, like I said, I definitely don't go out as much as I did when he was here. And I've definitely become more secluded in the house. I'm getting better about it. I'm, like, working harder now to, like, get myself out there a little bit more.
Yeah.
But it's tough. I don't know. I've become a very strange person that I don't feel like I fully know yet.
I totally get that. I'm like, who is this?
And I definitely do, like, a lot of stuff that's more, like, just me, myself, and I activities.
Yes.
Like, I freaking puzzle now, which is just ridiculous. But it's like, I can sit there and be centered. But I'm also someone now that needs constant stimuli, and most of the time, like, from multiple places.
Yeah.
So, like, if I'm doing a puzzle, I need the TV on, or I'm going to have the TV on and I'm going to have the audiobook on. Yeah. Or, like, if I'm playing a video game, I'll have the video game on, but then there's also a YouTube video down on here. Like, I can't just have one. Yeah. Because I need to make that silence stop. It can't be there at all. But now, in some weird ways, I've become a little bit more outgoing. I've, like, really tried to force myself to be more like him and kind of introduce myself to more people and get out there more when I'm feeling like I can.
Right.
And so I feel like I have more new friendships at work that I probably wouldn't have made on my own in the past. Because I definitely had people, like, in my past teaching jobs that, like, I got along with, but I didn't have anyone that I was hanging out with outside of work.
Right.
Like, I kind of kept to myself at work. So I've kind of, like, forced myself. I'm like, you need to, like, try to be this person for yourself now.
Right.
It's not going to be the same and it's not going to be as good, but, like, you need to try to be this person for yourself. The amount of my students that have come up to me and told me about losses in their life.
Wow.
With absolutely no knowledge of what's going on in my life. None of my kids know. But somehow they can, like, sense it.
There's, like, a different sort of empathy, I think, that grieving people have.
Yeah, and they'll just, like, that first year, they just volunteered this stuff to me, and I'm like,
wow,
it's so awful to know that so many other people are going through these things and still now have this. And I'll go to the teachers, and I'm like, did you know about this?
Right.
And it's like, and then I almost get this frustration that, like, parents aren't telling us, but, like, why was that their responsibility to tell us? But it's like...
And they're just expected to show up to school every day and, like, do homework and, like, just be a normal kid.
Yeah. And it's just, like, not an experience you're going to know until you're in it. And it's, like, once again, that selfish feeling that you get from this. But there was part of me that, like, oh, my God, I can finally talk to someone.
Yeah.
And I'm like, you've gone through this terrible thing. But the part of my brain was like, I can talk to someone.
And say the weird things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's been something weird, too, that's happened is I've been very bad at communicating.
So horrible.
And it's, like, living away from all of my people.
It's so easy to just, like, not.
It's so easy to not. I need to get better.
I know. It's, like, something in the new year. I'll work on that. But, like, I do my best. And most of my friends are very understanding about it. I'm like, I'm sorry. They're like, girl, you don't need to explain it again. Like, we know. What is the biggest question you have at the moment about grief?
I feel like the whole thing is like a giant question mark. And I feel like it's something that you don't know until you get there. Because, like, if you had told me last year that I would be where I am right now emotionally, I would have hated myself. Yep. Because it would have felt like a betrayal. How do you keep moving forward and kind of accept the person you're becoming?
Right.
Without hating yourself? My biggest question is, like, when are we going to live in a world where we can all talk about this and not be judged for it? Because it's like we're all going to go through it, and I just can't now understand where I am,
right,
not having the empathy or the space,
right,
for people to, like, feel the way that they're feeling, but also, like, continue to talk about their people. finding new ways to celebrate him. I feel like that's always my biggest question is like, how can I find new ways to keep him here?
Yeah, I think my biggest question too is like, why are we not talking about this? And how do we talk about this in a way that's like respectful and open and honest and like inclusive to everybody in the conversation? Because obviously grief is so specific and like weird for everybody. We both don't feel seen in a lot of places, and maybe we feel more seen in others. So like, what is the answer to like being supportive? I mean, what do you want to say to people who are going through any sort of grief?
Then one big thing is like, take up as much space as you need. That was something that I really, and I still struggle with, is giving myself permission to take up a little bit of space, because I've never wanted to be a center of attention person. Still don't want that.
Right.
But like, to allow myself to at least have the space to grieve is challenging. Don't question the crazy. Like, if it is what gets you through the day, if it is what is keeping you alive, and if you're safe, you're not getting hurt, like, it's fine.
Right.
Don't question it. Just do whatever
do the
you
weird
need
rituals.
To. Yeah.
Do the weird sayings in your head, whatever you need.
Whatever you need to do, do it. Try to be as open as possible with the people around you about where your mental health is at.
Yeah.
Because I definitely think that's what helped me. I think if I kept some of this stuff to myself, I might have acted on them. I think it's good that I had people around to tell.
I would say exactly what you just said. There's no like magic recipe. There's no 5 stages and it's over. It's a forever thing. It's until you die. It's going to be there. And it's going to look different at all the stages of your life. And you just have to like accept that, not accept the situation. I don't think you really need to do that. I think you just need to accept that the grief is with you, because it's not going to go anywhere. And you can try to drown it out. Sure. You can do all the things to try to ignore it, but it's there and it's going to be there. So accepting that it's there, I think, is like a really, really big thing. Like accepting that this is something you have to live with. It's okay to feel, like it's okay to be grieving. And as much as like society hates it, the more we do it, the more it will be accepted and the more we're going to understand collectively. So I think it is something we need to talk about.
I think something I was guilty of in the beginning was like, don't bottle it up. I have now cried in a lot of really weird places.
Oh my God, yeah.
And like, just accept that that's going to happen, and it doesn't really matter what that random person who crosses you on the street is thinking, because you're never going to see them again anyway.
Right, it does not matter. And it hits you very, very randomly.
And so if letting go in that moment is helping alleviate a little bit of it, let it go.
And I think with that comes the number one thing that's helped me, which is like, just focus on right now.
Yeah.
You can try to plan for the future. You can think about, how am I going to ever love again? You can do all these things that people are trying to tell you to do. I just need to get through right now. Not even today. I need to get through like right now. Instead of figuring out all the logistics, like how am I going to heal from this? How is this going to affect me in the future? How am I going to move forward? Like don't even go there with yourself, because you're just trying to get through it. And if you think too big picture, it's like it will overwhelm you and make you feel like you're not capable and like you can't. But you can, and you just need to worry about, how am I going to get through right now?
Yeah, it's genuinely like minute by minute. And like, I don't have a 5-year plan for myself anymore, because I watched the one I had disappear. So now it's just like surviving minute by minute. House still paid for, still got a roof over my head.
Right.
Okay, we're fine. Good enough. Yeah, if anyone ever wants to donate to Reads Across America, that'd be great. That's another thing that's very similar to the Bells, where they give, or they try to give, every veteran's cemetery wreaths to place in the graves. And when they place them, they also like read the name off the stone. So it's like, once again, another opportunity for like every veteran's name to be said. And if there's not enough wreaths, a lot of the people that are kind of towards the backs of cemeteries who have been there longer kind of miss that chance.
Yeah, good to know. We will put the link if you want to donate. Do you do it like in somebody's name, or do you just...
You can do both. You can donate in their name, or you can donate to a specific cemetery.
So yes, definitely click the link, check that out. And if you want to donate, great. And if you can't donate, sharing is always an awesome thing to do. Thank you so much for coming on. I am so glad we did this. And I'm hoping that everyone enjoyed this episode. Thank you so much for coming on today. I hope you feel good about it.
Yeah. In like the strangest way, yes.
Yeah, like this was really healing, I think, in so many ways. So thank you. Thank you guys so much for listening to today's episode. It was extremely special to me. It was an incredible experience getting to talk to somebody who has been through something that I just relate to so much. If you are watching on YouTube, definitely subscribe and hit that like button, turn on notifications, and stick around for some more really, really interesting topics. And of course, if you are listening on any streaming platform, definitely rate the podcast and add it to your library. Thank you guys so much for listening, and we'll see you next time on the And Also podcast.